Holy hills. Increase on the inclines, decrease on the declines, and don't get burned on the trails. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Learn to Run podcast with myself, Dr. Matt Meinert. This is an educational podcast where you get to vote on the episode topics. Current state of affairs. I am sorry I've been a little MIA. I haven't posted as frequently. You could say maybe I hit a little bit of a wall or low energy, but I'm back. I feel like with a podcast is where I'm least confident. I'm more of a visual learner myself, and that's how I feel most comfortable teaching some of these concepts. So I think I've just been putting it off, but I want to change that because I've gotten a lot of good feedback. Even though the YouTube and Instagram, I can include more videos for these topics, there are a lot of you that do listen to these on your runs and find it beneficial. So I'm going to be more consistent. So thanks for sticking there with me. On that note, I was going to do 3 episodes all about analogies. The first one was about mechanics. I included some new ones that we haven't heard before, but then I was struggling with the training aspect. And I was like, I already have done so many episodes. In every episode, I try to include analogies because I feel like that's the quickest way to learn and transfer information is by applying a new concept, to some concept or construct that you already have, just to enhance the learning experience. So I don't want to leave you hanging. This episode is about hills, running uphill, downhill, and on trails. But I'm going to refer you to some of the prior episodes where I do talk about training and injury analogies. And I'm going to go through those real quickly right now of what season and what episodes those are. If you want to skip ahead and just look in the show notes, go for it. But I'm just going to quickly give you an idea of which episodes to check out. So for training analogies, Season 1, Episode 9, Need for Speed Part 2. I talk about how to train using intervals to get faster in your training. 10, 11, and 12 of Season 1. I'll talk all about strength training, how we should need to challenge the muscles, how and more than we use them with running to be beneficial. Episode 14, Pace Yourself with Your Heart Rate. I go over analogy for heart rate and what causes fatigue. That was 14. Season 2, there's 3 episodes. Season 2, Episode 2 was about programming, mechanics, and shoes. Episode 6 of Season 2 was outdoor versus treadmill. And Episode 7 of Season 2 was mechanics versus training. If you're looking for injury analogies, this is what I recommend. Season 1, Episode 3, Should You Stretch? Episode 4, Shin Splints. Episode 7 of Season 1, IT Band Friction Syndrome. 16 and 17 of Season 1, 16 was low back pain, 17 was knee pain. And then the 2 in Season 2 is Episode 1, Muscle Love 101, Tight or Torn. And then Season 2, Episode 3 is When You Should See a Physical Therapist. So those are what I'd recommend. They'll be in the show notes if you want to check those out if you're looking for analogies. But without further ado, what are we talking about this week? This one has been a long time coming. It's such a popular question. I'm glad that we finally voted on this topic and we're going to talk about it. How can we handle hills and trails most efficiently? What's the strategy? What do we need to change? What do we not need to change? We're going to go over those. So the 3 topics, the 3 points, scenarios that we're going to talk about are 1, running uphill or running on an incline. The second is going to be running downhill or a decline. And the third and final is going to be about trail running, running on uneven surfaces, not cement, typically dirt or gravel. We're going to talk about those. So as always, what is some foundational knowledge that we need to know before going into this? So there's kind of 2 things. One, we need to know how to run most efficiently on a flat surface and know those variables and know what characteristics and actions those are before we go fluctuating or changing those. And also I want to break it down into 3 modifiable actions. What you do, what you control while you're running. As we're going to go over those two. So the first one is going to be with the modifiable actions. What are the actions that you control? What can you change while you're running? The first one is your center of mass. Where is your weight? Where is your body weight in relationship to your feet or your base of support? The next is going to be the force of your legs. What percent of exertion of the muscles? How much are you activating? How much force are you producing with the legs? And then the speed of your legs, how quickly your legs are moving, not the speed of your entire body, but how quickly are you moving your legs? And so zoom in a little bit more specific with those three. With the center of mass, it's how far are you leaning? Example might be leaning forward at 5-degree angle or a 10-degree angle. That's what we can fluctuate and change. With the force of the legs, how much force is being applied to the ground? Example, 100 pounds of force. Would it be 150? You can fluctuate and change how much force that you derive from the muscles to the ground. And the final one was that speed of the legs. How often or how frequently are you exerting that force to the ground? Also known as cadence or step rate. Example, 170 times in a minute or 180 times in a minute. These are things that we can fluctuate. So center of mass, force of the legs, and speed of the legs. So using learn to run terms, what are those three? How are we going to talk about those? So the lean and the base support and the center of mass, that's what I refer to as the hankle. Leaning forward by hinging at the ankle. So we're going to talk about the hankle, how that changes with these different scenarios. We're going to talk about the push with the tush, how you propel your body forward, pushing the ground backwards to move forward. And the final one is going to be that cadence or that step rate. How frequently are you moving your legs? How do these three actions change with these three different scenarios? So the final piece of foundational knowledge before we get into these is what should it be when we're running in a perfect condition, flat surface? How do we move forward? How do we lean? How much do we lean? What's our frequency of steps on a flat surface? So first with the hankle, in order to maintain our momentum, to maintain this forward movement, minimizing the braking or slowing down, also known as overstriding, we want to make sure we have our body stacked first. Our shoulders are stacked over our hips, over our ankles. Then how we lean while running on a flat surface is we're going to shift our weight forward. But the key is keeping that stack, not leading with the shoulders going out in front of the body. It's more leading with your hips where your center of mass is. That's shifting forward, creating this constant sensation of like you're almost falling. That's what's going to set you up for success of the proximity of your base support where you land and load and where your center of mass is to minimize braking. The next is the push. How we do this. To move forward, we extend the hip. The hip. As we extend the hip, the muscles that are responsible for that is the glute max, the tush, and the hamstrings at the hip. The hamstrings act both at the hip and the knee. And we're going to talk about when on a flat surface, mainly when we're propelling, we want to just use the muscles at the hip. But when it comes to trails, because we do need to pick the feet up more if it's an unlevel or uneven surface, that's where we will start to incorporate the hamstrings at the knee, but we don't need to on a flat surface. Remember, it's all about efficiency. All the force, all the energy that you're exerting, that you're creating, if it's not going towards the principle of moving you forward, it's wasted energy. So the key with the push on a flat surface, this is super important, not using your calves or your quads to propel you. We use those muscles with landing, with shock absorption, but on a flat surface, you just push the ground backwards, not down and back, just backwards. The only way that you can push the ground downwards, which the result would be you going up, would be using the calves or the quads. We'll talk later about we do need to recruit these if we're going uphill, if our body is transferring or translating upwards, But on a flat surface, push backwards. The cadence, the step rate, on a flat, this is highly dependent on your speed, but somewhere between 160 and 180 steps per minute. So if you do the math, that's around 3 hertz or 3 steps every 1 second. If you're walking, the average step rate is around 100. And for most people, walking occurs at around 3.5 to 4.5 miles per hour. Now, if you're running a 10-minute pace or 6 miles per hour, if you have 180 steps per minute, if you're that quickly placing force or pushing force through the ground, we might be minimizing or taking away some of that forward propulsion. This is where I think back to the paddle in the water. I put the paddle in the water and I push the water back. If I have too high of a step rate or frequency at a slower speed, what I may be doing is doing more time just picking that paddle up out of the water and not really focusing on that pushing the water back. So ideally 160 to 180 steps per minute on a flat road or a flat surface. Let's go with our first scenario, running on an incline. So with all these, I'm going to go through these 3 actions, how you change them or not, and then give you a little mantra of something to think about. That way, when you see a hill, you see an incline or a decline, or you're on trails, you know what to think, you know what to do. So going uphill, going up an incline, or our hankle, our lean, is going to increase. As the ground, the surface starts to go up, if we don't match our lean to that, we have to work harder. We want to match our lean to the incline. So when you see a hill, we lean further forward. What we don't want is sometimes people will lean, but they'll lean by hinging at the hips, a hippie, not leaning at the ankles, a hankle. So if you see somebody running, if you're looking at them from the side, if they go up a hill and they start to have their shoulders go out in front of them and their hips stay back, then their weight stays back. So they're braking and slowing down. So the key is leaning, hinging at the ankle, and going uphill, that increases. Lean more. As far as the push, the propulsion, we want to increase because we're having to go translate our body upwards, because the incline is making it more challenging for me to move forward, we're going to have to increase the push. But not only that, now is when we need to push down. In order to go up, this is where we want to now recruit the calves and the quads. What I've always, this whole time, been trying to say is we don't need to use these if it's a flat surface. So now we're going to be increasing the push and pushing down with the calves and the quads. And you don't have to think about calves or quads. You just think about pushing down and back, and you're increasing how hard that you push when going uphill. What about our step rate? What about our cadence, our frequency? Well, this is something that you don't really have to think about, but it's naturally going to happen. If you want to maintain your speed, you're going to have to increase your step rate. And why is that? Well, as a result of the natural decrease in the stride length, how far you move between steps, you're not thinking about this, but because the incline, because the ground is going to meet you sooner, we're naturally going to have a shorter step length or a shorter stride. So subconsciously, to maintain our speed, we're going to have to increase the number of times that we apply force to the ground. So what do you notice with all of these? Everything on an incline, everything increased. So your mantra is increase on the inclines. It's that simple. Lean more, push further and harder, and increase the frequency. So now if we're going downhill or going on a decline, let's guess. What do we think? It should be the exact opposite, right? Now we're going downwards. The angle of inclination is descending. So what do you think is going to happen with all 3 of these? They decrease. So let's go through all these and why that is. The hankle, the lean, the hinge. We're ideally decreasing the lean. If we lean further forward, we can have it where you've probably had it happen before, where you're moving so quick, the ground in gravity is propelling and pushing you even further forward or faster, and your feet can't catch up, and we fall. So the main theme of all this is let the hill do the work. And so our lean becomes our throttle. If we want to go faster, we simply do lean a little bit further forward. If we want to slow down, we lean a little bit further back. And this is my strategy. What I do is using these declines as an act of recovery, allowing my heart rate to go down. So in order to do that, I want to keep my body as relaxed as possible and let the hill do the work. And the only thing that I'm really controlling is that lean. Where is my weight? Where is my center of mass within my base support? So with the pushing, I'm not doing it. I'm having my legs relax and I'm letting the hill do the work. And I'm using this as an opportunity to conserve energy, to allow my heart rate to go down, to decrease the oxygen demand. And as a result of the legs being more relaxed, there'll be a natural decrease in the cadence or the step rate. It's a conscious, actionable effort to increase the rate of how quickly the frequency that you move your legs. So as a result of having your body relaxed, letting the hill do the work, adjusting your lean, decreasing your lean, everything else will kind of take place. You'll see the hill do the work, muscles stay relaxed, the step rate will naturally decrease. So your mantra, decrease on the declines. That's it. So far, pretty simple. Going up inclines, we're increasing. Going downhill or declines, we're decreasing. What about trails? So as you know, or may not know, I'm a physical therapist. I care deeply about your safety. I don't really care how fast you are. I do care, but what I care about more is that you don't get hurt. Because what happens if you get hurt and you have to take time away, you have no speed. So safety above all, if I had to prioritize. So with trails, with an uneven surface, what I don't want is you to fall. I don't want you to stub your toe, hit a root or a rut, wherever you live, and fall. So because of that, because of safety and priority over performance, that's where there are some of these factors that are going to be less efficient than if you were on a flat, even surface. But again, safety above all. So for trails, we're decreasing everything. All these three things, the lean, the push, the cadence. And why is that? Well, first, with the Hankel, with the lean, ideally when we're running, when we have that lean, when we have our center of mass shifted forward within our base support, we're a lot closer to falling. I've talked before about running ideally is kind of a controlled fall. That's one of the skills that I teach in the 7-day mechanics experience. So as a result, if you're leaning further forward and your foot does catch a little stump, a root, a rock, you stand almost no chance of being upright. You will fall flat and fast. So because of that, I want to decrease the lean. I want to make sure that my hips stay over my feet as opposed to leaning further forward with my hips going forward and leading the way. Said another way, I don't like referring to the feet. We talk about overstriding or the landing. I like thinking about the ground and the leaving the ground, not the landing of the ground. So we talk about breaking or preventing overstriding. We're always talking about keeping your feet underneath you. Well, how we can do that is by actually a top-down approach, by leaning your hips forward, your body forward. Naturally, your feet are going to be set up to be underneath you more. So instead of controlling for the feet in the landing, it's controlling for the lean. So ideally with trails, we're going to be a little bit more upright, still a slight lean, but not as much on a flat road because we don't want to fall. As far as the push, still ideally how we move forward is we push the ground back. We're still doing that. But now because we don't want to skim the ground and hit something and fall, after we push the ground back, that's when we do want to start to pick your feet up more. And that's where the hamstrings work at both the hip and the knee. So after you extend the hip, naturally you want to pick your feet up more so you don't hit something. But what that doesn't entail is picking the feet up and jumping and going up in the air. We're still trying to glide and stay horizontal, but we're trying to have our feet go up higher, but not our feet and our entire body. I hope that makes sense. And I have a little mantra here in a second to think of. So again, with the push, we're decreasing the push. We're trying to keep the feet underneath you, which is some of the product of the lean or lack of lean. Push, pick up, push, pick up. Our cadence, our step rate. Again, this is something you're not really going to consciously think about, but as a result of you picking your feet up higher off the ground, the further the feet are off of the ground, the higher they are, the less amount of time that they're going to be able to be on the ground to increase that step rate. So naturally, there's going to be a decrease in your cadence or your step rate. So because the feet are coming higher and higher off the ground, naturally, there's going to be less turnover rate, less step rate or cadence. So what's the mantra? What can you think about? What's the one thing you can think that all this stuff will naturally just take place on the trails? This is it. Imagine like you're running on hot coals on the trails. So why is that? Hot coals. Coals are uneven. So naturally, as a result of running on a more uneven, we're going to tend to be a little bit more upright, keeping our feet underneath us more. So that helps with the lean. Thinking about the hot, not having our feet on the ground quite as long is going to decrease that push naturally. And you're naturally going to pick your feet up more because you don't want to burn your feet. And as far as the step rate, because the feet are coming higher off the ground, again, naturally, that's just going to decrease. So if you think about running on hot coals on trails, you're naturally going to decrease the lean, decrease the push, start to pick up your feet, and your step rate will naturally decrease. I want to go over another little bonus here, a little mind trick. This is something that I do. You can try it out. If it works for you, great. If not, then that's okay too. So much of this is mental. So here it is. If you're going uphill, I know deep down subconsciously that this is going to tire me out, that I'm going to have to work harder, that it may fatigue me more. But I flip the script. I think powering up. I think of it like a video game where maybe you're going up a ramp, it has those little arrows, and you power up. I think when I'm running uphill, I'm actually powering up. My energy is actually increasing. Try it out, see what you think. And then going downhill, I think heart rate down, active recovery, let the hill do the work. So one, and naturally that it would decrease or fatigue you, I'm thinking the opposite. I'm thinking this is actually energizing me. And then allowing on the way down, on the downhill, instead of trying to speed up or trying to slow down, which is going to cost more energy, just being as relaxed as possible. The more relaxed we are, the less muscles are on, the less calories are needed, the less our heart has to work, less oxygen demand. So being relaxed and let the hill do the work. So anytime you see a hill, instead of dreading it, think, great, here's an opportunity for me to power up and active recovery, heart rate down. Let's go through an actionable scenario of if you're out running and you're on a flat, you see an incline, you see a decline, or suddenly you're on trails or an uneven surface. What do you think? Let's put this into action on your next run. So you're running on a flat surface. I want you to get to the point where you're not thinking at all about your mechanics. Think now so you don't have to later. And so then naturally you're running on flat, you're not thinking, you're in your happy place, and suddenly you come up on an incline or a hill. You're going to think, incline, increase, power up. That's the physical and the mental aspect. Now you're going down a hill. You're like, oh, good. I get a little active recovery here. I can get a little break. I can allow my heart rate to come down, catch my breath a little bit. Decline, cue the decrease, heart rate down. Coming up now, you're back on a flat surface. You come up on an uneven trail that has some roots or ruts or rocks or whatever. You're thinking, oh boy, oh dear, we got some hot coals here. Don't burn your feet. increase inclines, decrease declines, don't burn your feet. Let's go over some big picture points. Again, the 3 actions that you can change while you run and fluctuate are the lean, the propulsion, and your quickness or your speed of your leg movement. How much are you leaning your center of mass within your base of support? How much force are you applying to the ground? And how quickly are you repeating that? Another way to think about it is think about how we transport or move on different devices. We talked before about a skateboard. It makes it easier to think, oh yeah, that's how I move forward, is I push the ground back. Well, if you're on a bike, if you're going up a hill and down a hill, think, all right, great. I know I'm gonna have to work a little bit harder going up the incline, and then going downhill, just coast. Just let the hill do the work and allow the heart rate to come down. So thinking about if you were on a bike, what would you do? And transfer and translate that to running. When it comes to the trails, again, thinking safety above all, think keep it tight on the trails. By keeping everything in a little bit closer, we're going to help to keep our center of mass within our base support, and we're going to have a better chance of not falling. So by thinking of keeping it tight, not pushing the ground as far back, not leaning as far forward, by imagining you're running in a coffin or a box, that can help you to keep it safe on the trails. So if you want to get to the point where you're running on a flat surface and you are subconsciously, you're not thinking about it at all, you're just running, I've got options for you. Again, think now so you don't have to later. With your mechanics, I broke down running or moving forward into 7 individual skills, and that's the 7-day mechanics experience, where essentially I'm teaching you how to stand, how to lean, how to walk, and then how to run. Another option is getting immediate feedback with the tennis ball necklace. I have 3 skills over 3 days using the tennis ball necklace. It's a tennis ball filled with pennies or metal washers around a shoelace around your neck, and teaching you that when you move, what the ball should do or shouldn't do, and getting the auditory feedback and tactile feedback in real time, and then mimicking the mechanics, taking the ball off and changing and conforming how you move horizontal. What I'm working on now, and I'm almost done, is a learn to glide. I want to have different scenarios for different people. People learn different ways. But essentially what I'm going to do is I have teaching the gliding, moving purely horizontal. There's 2 components of that. There's the lean, your momentum, and then the muscle activation. So gliding is not braking or slowing yourself down, and not bounding or going up and down. So I teach you how to lean first. That's important. That's first before the propulsion, because you have to have a lean in order to have the efficient propulsion, or how to push the ground back. But I teach you leaning while you're standing in place and stationary, and then while walking, and then while running, and then the propulsion, the push with the tush, the glide, first in stationary, then with walking, and then with running. Another option is we have one-on-one experience where you can send me a video of you running. We do a Zoom session, we go over it together, and I get to give you an action plan and access to one of these 3 different resources. You can go and see my YouTube as well for examples of these sessions. Please, if you have ever found this podcast valuable, share, rate, review. Please let me know that this is worth doing. It will help me to reach a wider audience and continue to grow. Until next time, bye.